What makes our hearts soar? It's in knowing we have devoted ourselves to serving you with care. The kind of care that goes above and beyond, taking you through unforgettable journeys that last a lifetime. As Asia's first and longest serving airline, we are made for the skies. Experience heartfelt service when you fly with Philippine Airlines.
In many parts of the world, a child's chance to learn still depends on where they are born, how large or how little their family earns, or the traditions they are born into. In the most underserved communities of India, education is not a right, it is a privilege. And for millions of children, especially girls, that privilege remains out of reach. Barriers of poverty, discrimination, and indifference keep them from classrooms and from the opportunity to shape better futures for themselves and their communities. But an organization has dared to break this cycle, not with charity, but with community led transformation. Since 2007, Educate Girls has redefined what is possible. With an audacious vision of behavioral, social, and economic change, they have empowered villages to become champions for their own daughters. By mobilizing parents, thousands of local volunteers, and government systems, they have built a self sustaining model that brings girls not only back to school, but forward into opportunity. Their work is more than education, it is a force for systemic change, a movement toward a world where no child and no girl is left behind.
It's okay, I can just put it on the floor. Safina just went to the restroom. As soon as she walks in,
We can do the pre-event spills.
Yeah.
Would you wanna do the pre-event spills first? Because it'll be in a few minutes.
Sure. I'll tell them that you're gonna start today.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this year's RMTLI Lecture Series. We'd like to acknowledge first our partners for today's event. The event is made possible by Philippine Airlines, the official airline partner of the 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Awards Lecture Series. SGV & Co., major sponsor of the 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Awards Lecture Series and thematic events, supported by Pioneer and the Peace and Equity Foundation. We'd also like to thank and acknowledge our co-conveners, 2030 Youth Force, ASEAN Youth Organization, Good Gov PH, Philippine Young Water Professionals, Better with Water Philippines, Far Eastern University Nicanor Reyes Memorial Foundation. We'd also like to thank our media partners for the 67th Ramon Magsaysay Awards Festival season, Associated Press, Puma Podcast, and Tatler Philippines. We'd love to see you share your time with us here during the lectures. Please tag us on social media at Magsaysay Award with the hashtags Ramon Magsaysay Award and hashtag RMTLI Lecture Series. We invite everyone as well to visit the book fair and the food booths at the Ramon Magsaysay Plaza, and don't miss the chance to join the vision board activity just outside the hall. Share your thoughts, your dreams, everything, your inspirations with us. Snacks will be provided for all our attendees today. Please make sure to secure your food stub at the lecture hall or for the lecture food tables at the end of the session to claim your packed snacks. The program will begin shortly. Thank you. Hello again. Good afternoon. My name is Kat Trevino. I am a mental health advocate and environmentalist, and it is my honor to welcome you to the 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Transformative Leadership Institute Lecture Series featuring 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from India, Foundation to Educate Girls Globally, also known as Educate Girls. For an orderly conduct of the program, may we remind you of the following house rules. Please observe silence during the program. Please be respectful to the speakers and the fellow participants. During the open forum, you may write your question on pieces of paper provided and give it to an usher. Please secure your food stubs as well to be presented to the lecture food tables at the end of the session to collect your snacks. And in case of medical emergency, please approach any of our ushers. If there is a need to evacuate, please stay calm. All doors in the halls will be opened. The usher will facilitate an orderly evacuation if needed. The exit doors are on the left side of the hall. Those who are on stage and on the first rows 1 to 10 will use the door near the stage, while those in rows 11 onwards will use a door near the back of the hall. Photo and video and audio documentation of the event, especially those of the speakers, may be posted in our social media platforms, website, and other promotional materials of the event at the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, along with our event partners. If you wish to be excluded from the photo, video, or audio, please occupy the seats at the back of the hall as well as the seats in the Innovation Hub.
Today's program, we would like to remind the audience of the following. The video and audio functions of our audience will be disabled during the lecture. For questions, clarifications, and/or comments, we encourage everyone to use the Q&A tab in the chat room in the Zoom webinar or the comment section in Facebook or YouTube. We will try to address as many relevant questions and comments during the session. Please be respectful in the chat room, Q&A tab, and comment section. Please follow the Ramon Magsaysay Award on our social media accounts in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. For more information on the Ramon Magsaysay Award and this year's laureates, please visit our website at www.rmaward.asia. Thank you for joining us today. We will begin the program in a few minutes.
Now to formally open the first public forum for this year's lecture series and this afternoon's event, may we now call on the president of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, Ms. Susan Apan.
Thank you, Kat. Hello, everybody. Have you ever stopped to think what your life would be like if you never went to school? If no one ever taught you to read signs while crossing the street, read books, or even write your name? It's hard to imagine, isn't it? And yet, for millions of girls and young women around the world, and it's 2025, this still is their reality. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Ramon Magsaysay Foundation, three of which are with us this afternoon, I am so honored to welcome Dr. Cynthia Bautista, who will be moderating our talk this afternoon, Attorney Ging Montinola, who is with us, and Brother Dodo Fernandez, part of our Board of Trustees. We welcome all of you to the Ramon Magsaysay Transformative Leadership Institute Lecture for 2025, entitled Educate Girls learnings that transform communities. This annual lecture brings us closer to the heart of the Ramon Magsaysay Award, to the people and movements that redefine leadership as selfless service and empathy in action. And what better way to begin this year's series than with a conversation about something that is so important, something so basic, education. Especially girls' education, one of the most powerful forces for social change in today's world. Across many parts of the world, including rural India, millions of girls are still denied this basic right, held back by poverty, sometimes distance, or tradition. But what happens when a community accepts the change and transformation to these women and they become more than child bearers, but they become women who are empowered to lead, to speak, and to think for themselves? That's the story of Foundation to Educate Girls Globally, commonly known as Educate Girls, our 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee. Through a powerful community-driven model, Educate Girls works hand in hand with local volunteers, parents, and village leaders to find out-of-school girls and young women and bring them back into classrooms with the belief that girls deserve more. They deserve to learn, to grow, to lead, and to become fulfilled human beings. That is the essence of the Ramon Magsaysay Award, the greatness of spirit that begins in compassion and expands into lasting transformation. As we begin today's lecture, I invite you all to reflect. Who opened the door for you to dream, to learn? And how, after today's lecture, you might do the same for someone else. With that thought, it's time to begin our afternoon of learning and inspiration. Please join me in welcoming our host for today's session, Kat Trevino, also a passionate champion for women's empowerment. Kat, we are so glad you're with us today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Susan Afan, for that impactful welcoming remarks. Now, in the next 2 hours, we will learn how Educate Girls has partnered with local and international organizations to bring quality education to some of the most remote areas in India. Ms. Safeena Husain will share strategies her team used to mobilize community, volunteers, school management committees, and local governments in their mission to bring girls back to school. To give us a glimpse of the meaningful work and impact of Educate Girls, let's now watch this video.
In many parts of the world, a child's chance to learn still depends on where they are born, how large or how little their family earns, or the traditions they are born into. In the most underserved communities of India, education is not a right, it is a privilege. And for millions of children, especially girls, that privilege remains out of reach. Barriers of poverty, discrimination, and indifference keep them from classrooms and from the opportunity to shape better futures for themselves and their communities. But an organization has dared to break this cycle, not with charity, but with community-led transformation. Since 2007, Educate Girls has redefined what is possible. With an audacious vision of behavioral, social, and economic change, they have empowered villages to become champions for their own daughters. By mobilizing parents, thousands of local volunteers, and government systems, they have built a self-sustaining model that brings girls not only back to school, but forward into opportunity. Their work is more than education. It is a force for systemic change, a movement toward a world where no child and no girl is left behind.
Now to welcome our program 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from India, Foundation to Educate Girls Globally, represented by its founder and trustee, Safeena Husain.
Thank you so much. So I first and foremost wanted to really thank the foundation for this incredible honor. It's unbelievable. I think, Susan, when you called us, we couldn't even believe what you were saying. So thank you so much. And I wanted to tell you the story of Educate Girls today. So let me start with the story of a little girl. I met Shobha, this little girl, in 2008, and she was just 9 years old at that time, and bright-eyed and full of mischief. And I asked her, I said, Shobha, do you go to school? And she said, yes, with this big smile. But there was one little problem, and that is that her name wasn't in the school register. So I was trying to understand. I said, the child says she's going to school, but how is this possible? So I found out that she rode with her brother on his bicycle to school, and when he went in, she stayed outside and played or waited for him or came back home. That to her meant that she was going to school. She didn't have a uniform, she didn't have books, she didn't even have a place in the classroom. She was simply watching from the outside while her brother went in to learn. And that's because at that time, her father, Dula Ram, believed in education for his sons, but not for his daughters. So today, and that was 18 years ago, and today, mankind can send rovers to Mars, and yet we cannot send all our daughters to school. It's a really unbelievable, sad state of affairs. We still have 133 million girls globally who are not in school, and they're out of school. And that's roughly, let me show you, that is roughly the population of... Hello? Hi. Yeah. At 133 million girls, that is the population, more than the population of the entire country of the Philippines. So imagine, even today, we have a nation of Shobhas who are missing from the classroom. So why are millions of girls not in education? There are two kinds of barriers that stand in their way. They're societal and systemic. Societal barriers keep girls at home to cook, clean, fetch water, tend to cattle, graze the goats, care for siblings, while poverty and marginalization mean that girls are last to be enrolled and first to be pulled out. Then there are barriers within the system, right? And in many times schools are far away, especially in rural areas. The distance can be a huge inhibitor. For example, in India, for every 100 primary schools, we have only 26 secondary schools. And those who are ineligible for formal schooling, second chance programs like open schooling or remote learning are often missing, inaccessible, especially in rural areas. But that is not all. Underneath it all is the usual suspect, patriarchy. Patriarchy has remarkable stamina. It has survived for centuries without needing an upgrade. And it shows up in terms of an all-pervasive mindset that values a girl less than a boy. It's a mindset where a goat is an asset and a girl is a liability. So what happens when girls like Shobha do not get an education? What is the cost of doing nothing? The truth is that the cost is far too high. Because when a girl is denied an education, the cost is not hers alone. It unleashes a huge negative multiplier effect. When a girl drops out of school, she is more likely to marry early. When she marries early, she is more likely to have children early. When she has children early, she is more likely to die in childbirth. Her children are less likely to survive, be healthy, or immunized. She is more vulnerable to domestic violence, trafficking, or abuse. Without an education, she cannot get a job, apply for a formal loan, or learn new skills. She has limited opportunities and very limited choices. But you don't have to take my word for it. Data shows that girls with no education are 16 times more likely to be married before the age of 18. Nearly 30% will face domestic violence, and 1 in 5 lacks access to financial systems. Across India, almost 80% women remain unskilled, and only 42% are in the labor force. The climate crisis only worsens these odds. Women and children are up to 14 times more likely to die in climate disasters compared to men. And we have seen this before. In the 1991 cyclone, when it hit Bangladesh, 90% of those who died were women. And in 2004 tsunami, 70% of the victims were women. Education could have been their life jacket. The cost of not acting is immeasurable. We pay with unfulfilled dreams, unrealized potential, and a world that remains unjust. And in an interconnected world, none of us can remain untouched by that injustice. So when a girl is excluded, she has no foothold to rise. Without education, she loses her choice, her voice, and her agency. And when a girl loses agency, a whole community loses progress. And that is why nearly 20 years ago, I founded Educate Girls and started work in Pali, Rajasthan. Educate Girls works in some of the most rural, remote, and tribal villages. And what do? First, we find local youth to join us as champions for girls' education. These are educated young women and men from the same villages, and they are guided by the motto, "My village, my problem, and I am the solution." We call them Team Balika, our team for the girl child. Once we find them, we train, mentor, and stand beside them. Armed with smartphones and technology, together we go door to door, mapping every household in the village, identifying all girls who are out of school. And because of our data and technology, every village is geotagged and every single girl is accounted for. Once we find all out of school girls, the work begins to change mindsets. Our teams meet with families, hold village meetings, neighborhood meetings, individually counsel parents to convince them to send their daughters to school. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes months, but they don't give up until every last girl is back in school. And once she's in school, we make sure that she stays. We work with schools to ensure that the school is girl-friendly. It has safe classrooms, separate toilet for girls, clean drinking water, and also bringing her to school is not enough. Supporting her learning is absolutely essential. Since most of our girls are first-generation learners, there's no one at home to help them with homework or with reading. So we run remedial learning programs that build strong foundations in literacy and numeracy. And when formal schooling isn't possible, we open another door. Our Second Chance program helps girls and young women complete their secondary education. They study in village-based learning camps, guided by a local, compassionate female facilitator. Here they prepare for their 10th grade exams through state-run open schools. They also learn digital, financial skills, receive career awareness, and are connected to social protection schemes. Through it all, they're not only completing their education, but they're also rebuilding their confidence. And we don't do this alone. We work hand in hand with the government and mobilize local communities to strengthen the existing education system, not build a new one. The question is, does this model work and does it make a difference? Rigorous independent evaluations have found that more than 90% of the girls were back in school and staying in school. And when it came to improvement of learning outcomes, the gains were equivalent to 1 to 2 years of additional schooling for the average child, which is an extraordinary leap for a child entering the school for the first time. So we know our model works, but given the size of the problem, the question facing us was, how do we reach the maximum number of girls in the minimum amount of time? And this is a tough question because India is not just a country, it's a subcontinent. We have nearly 700,000 villages, right? And so where should we work and which areas should we prioritize? It was this urgency that led us to use AI and advanced analytics to build an algorithm to predict the number of out-of-school girls per village. Through this innovation, we uncovered a very key insight, that just 5% of villages in India held up to 40% of the country's out-of-school girls. And this insight actually changed everything for us. It meant that we could prioritize and scale our evidence-based model only to those villages where the problem was the most acute. With AI and precision targeting, we can pinpoint villages with the most out-of-school girls and accelerate change. So with AI showing us where to focus and community volunteers taking the lead, we have grown from 50 villages in Rajasthan into a people-powered movement reaching over 30,000 villages. And together with the support of over 55,000 Team Balika volunteers, we have brought over 2 million out-of-school girls back into school and kept 90% of them in school and improved learning outcomes for 2.4 million children. Our Second Chance program has now grown from a small pilot of 300 girls to now supporting over 31,500 girls in just a few years. Today, it is the largest Second Chance program for girls in our country. And when it comes to quality of their learning, I am so happy to tell you that this year, 2 of our girls were ranked amongst the highest scorers in the states of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. But the real impact actually goes much beyond these numbers, right? The real change is in the mindsets. It's in how girls see themselves and what they believe is possible for them. And so when we talk about changing mindsets, let me take you back to Shobha's story, right? We had enrolled her back in school in 2008. And then years later, in 2023, I went back to see Shobha. She is now a community nurse. She travels village to village. She goes house to house, caring for mothers and newborns. Dularam, her father, who once refused to send his daughters to school, he said to me, everyone should go to school. So I teased him. I said, but why? What's the point? And he said something to me. He said, because the world today is built for the educated. If you're not educated, you will be exploited like animals. And in that moment, I saw it, right? The real change that we dream of, not just a girl educated, but a father transformed. So where do we go from here? We are dreaming bigger than ever. We want to make a seismic dent in girls' education. Our bold vision is 10 by 10, which is 10 million learners over the next 10 years. Because when one girl is educated, something really extraordinary happens. She unlocks a positive multiplier. When a girl is in school, and every year she stays in school, she marries later. She has children later. She is less likely to die in childbirth. She's more likely to have fewer and healthier children. she has lower risk of facing abuse and being trafficked. For every extra year of schooling she receives, her world expands with more choices and more opportunities. And what about climate disasters? Deaths from disasters could fall by as much as 60% if majority of young women finish their lower secondary school. Studies have found that when more girls complete secondary education, entire communities are becoming more resilient in the face of natural disasters. Isn't it extraordinary? So why don't we see girls' education for what it truly is? It's the closest thing we have to a silver bullet to solve some of the world's most difficult problems. The World Bank says that girls' education can positively impact 9 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. 9 out of 17, from poverty, health to climate change. I've given you many reasons on why girls' education is a catalyst for progress in health, economics, and in climate action. But above all, there's really only one reason to do it, and that's because it's her right. So yes, we're dreaming of every girl receiving her right to a quality education. We're dreaming of unlocking millions of stories like Shobha's. But I'm going to tell you another story. This time it's a Vijaya. I met her in Pali years ago. She was a girl who had lost both her parents when she was very young, and without support, she might have been pulled out of school, married off before she could even choose her future. But we enrolled her, and education changed her life. When I met her years later, she was glowing with pride. She told me how she had not only completed her education, but recently handled all the paperwork for her aunt's apartment sale. Reading every document, negotiating the terms, cutting out the need for a broker, and saving her aunt 20,000 rupees. Vijaya now lives independently. She works, earns, rides a motorcycle, and is saving up to buy her own place. Her education has given her choices, movement, independence, freedoms that she might not have known otherwise. In almost 20 years of working for girls' education, I have never met a girl who said to me, "You know what? I want to stay at home. I want to graze the cattle. I want to look after the siblings," or that I want to be a child bride. Every single girl I meet wants to go to school. So I'll leave you with the compelling words of Nagina Bano, our community volunteer. Nagina Bano herself was a tortured and abandoned child bride, but she used her own education to build a future for herself and for her children. And now she works as a fierce champion for girls, and she told me, she said, "My education is the only thing that is truly mine. No one can beat it out of me. No one can steal it. No flood, no famine can take it away. My education will be with me till my dying day." I am Safeena Husain, and I educate girls. Thank you.
Truly inspiring work. Thank you so much, Safeena, for sharing with us Educate Girls' journey in education, and also the meaningful stories of the girls like Shobha and Vijaya, whose lives you changed for good. Today's moderator is Dr. Maria Cynthia Rose Bautista, a trustee at the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation. She also serves as a member on the Advisory Council of EDCOM 2 and the Board of Trustees at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. A respected academic leader, Dr. Bautista previously served as the Vice President for Academic Affairs of the University of the Philippines System as a Commissioner of the Commission on Higher Education from 2012 to 2016. She has chaired several national bodies in the social sciences and has been recognized with the National Research Council of the Philippines Achievement Award and the for Social Sciences and the Towns Award. May I now turn over our session to our moderator, Dr. Cynthia Bautista.
Thank you very much, Kat, for that introduction, and thank you very much, Safeena, for a truly inspiring sharing of the journey of Educate Girls. I guess I will call you to the stage so that we can have our conversation. I just have one question to ask you before we actually call on the other members of the panel, please. I guess my question is, Educate Girls has had partnerships with government. For instance, with Rajasthan's Department of Education under the Adopt a Block program, the incorporation of the Team Balika's model in the states, tracking of out-of-school girls, your expansion in Madhya Pradesh, and the policy pilots in Uttar Pradesh, of your village mapping system, as well as your training of trainers, and I guess your effect in changing mindsets in the villages as well as nationally. So my question is really, you have actually moved from a people's power, for something that's people-powered, wittingly or unwittingly, also to starting a policy embeddedness. So your scale came from Team Balika and outcomes-based financing. What did it take to translate community, energy, and data-driven iteration? And I must say, we were so amazed and impressed with your data-driven identification of the villages. What does it take? What did it take for you to get into a position of influencing the state and also influencing discourse?
Thank you so much for that question. Our work started with the communities and working in villages, and government has been a partner from day one. So in terms of having permissions to work in government schools and with the villages and the departments of education. So the work has always been sort of in partnerships, but I think as we have grown in scale, everything that we have built in Rajasthan, it has been easier because of the credibility and the evaluation, the evidence that we have created, that it's easier to get it then adopted by other states. So when the expansion happened to Madhya Pradesh and it happened to UP, we could actually showcase something that had actually been tested at massive scale. So I think that really helped, is that years and years of work that we had done at the grassroots helped to build the evidence, helped to build the scale that we could then take it to the government and then pilot it with the government in the new state. And when it felt like, yes, it was feasible, the adoption could happen.
So I said unwittingly, it may be because you were achieving, it's proof of concept, and that made it easier to it facilitated your relationship with government. I will not ask the next question because I think we should have more time for all the discussion. So I will now call our next panelist, our first panelist. Our first panelist today is Dr. Christopher Bernido, 2010 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from the Philippines. Dr. Bernido is the president of the Central Visayan Institute Foundation and a distinguished theoretical physicist and educator. I must say, he was from the University of the Philippines among the theoretical physicists dealing with Nobel Prize laureates when they inherited, I'm no longer in the skit, when they inherited a school that was educating poor high school students. And it was a decision for him and his wife, Victoria, to actually decide whether they would continue to remain in the university and do their theoretical physics, or would they now shift to educating poor children in Hagna, Bohol. And they did that, but he did not stop being a theoretical physicist. He would bring the physicists to Hagna. But I'm not supposed to say that. So together with his wife and Ramon Magsaysay Awardee, Dr. Maria Victoria Carpio Bernido, he developed the pioneering CVIF dynamic learning program, which has significantly transformed basic education in the Philippines. I think it's important to also note that this program is very science-based. They actually went to neurosciences and studied this before they actually embarked on the project. So a member of the National Academy of Science and Technology, Dr. Bernido has been recognized for his outstanding contributions to physics and education, both in the Philippines and abroad. Through a partnership with the Department of Education, the CVIF Dynamic Learning Program has been implemented in public schools, empowering, and also private schools. It's being piloted in public schools with the Department of Education, empowering teachers and students to achieve meaningful learning and even in challenging times. So joining Dr. Bernido is Georgina Yang. Maybe I call her here. Assistant Secretary of the Department of Education. Georgina Ann Yang serves there at the department as Assistant Secretary for Operations. I think she's really dealing with student learner services, including issues of mental health. Before joining DepEd, or the Department of Education, she was the Executive Director of the Galing Pook Foundation, which actually awards local governments that excel and that provide services to their people, where she advanced innovation and excellence in local governance. She also held leadership roles in the Department of Social Welfare and Development and the Office of the Vice President, driving programs on poverty alleviation and livelihood development. And she recently was awarded by the town's 10 outstanding women in the nation's service. Please welcome Ms. Georgina Yang. So as we aim to make this forum more globally inclusive, highlighting that access to education is a worldwide concern, we also invited two experts from Afghanistan and Colombia who have sent their pre-recorded video. The first one is 1994 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from Afghanistan, Sima Samar, who is now residing in Massachusetts, United States of America. A medical doctor by training, she dedicated her life to advancing education and health and equality for women and girls in Afghanistan, often under great personal risk. Dr. Sima Samar is a renowned Afghan human rights and women's rights advocate and former chairperson of the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission. Dr. Samar also served as Afghanistan's first Minister of Women's Affairs and as a United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Sudan from 2005 to 2009. The next remote reactor, so we have 4 in our panel, to the lecture is Vicky Colbert from Colombia. Vicky Colbert is the founder and director of Fundación Escuela Nueva, a Colombian NGO that has transformed education for millions of children through its innovative learner-centered model. The Escuela Nueva model is a participatory, learner-centered educational approach that originated in rural Colombia in the 1970s. It is designed to improve education quality by emphasizing active, cooperative, and self-paced learning, and by making the curriculum relevant to students' daily lives. Key features include teachers acting as facilitators, peer-to-peer learning, guided independent work, and strong community and parental involvement. Ms. Colbert is an Ashoka Fellow, awardee, and sociologist from Javeriana University, who co-created and led the renowned Escuela Nueva model, which has become a global reference in education reform. So I now give the floor to Dr. Chris Bernido for his reaction.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cynthia Bautista. Thank you also to the Ramon Magsaysay Foundation and to its president, Susan Afan, for the kind invitation to allow me to give some reaction about the whole thing. When I thought about this, we all know that the world is made up of male and female, or boys and girls, almost 50-50. So denying a right to half of this world would actually diminish all of us. Denying opportunities to half of this world would make us, humanity, the poorer. And I believe that girls and empowering of women would actually benefit the whole of mankind. Let me just give examples. I could give examples from social sciences or economics, but since I come from science, let me just mention a few from science. Powerful women in science. Let me start with Marie Curie, right? There are hundreds of Nobel Prize winners in this world, but less than 5 won the Nobel Prize twice. And one of these was Marie Curie. Marie Curie won the Nobel Prize for physics in 1903, and then again for chemistry in 1911. So she was exceptional. But she also struggled during her time to get a position, to work, to do what she wants to do. It also entailed a lot of suffering on her part. Another woman would be Cecilia Payne. She was actually, well, people refer to her as the mother of astrophysics. She was the first person to be given a PhD in astrophysics in 1925. She discovered that stars are mostly made up of hydrogen and helium, which was not the understanding at that time. So she also did some struggle. And finally, she got her PhD in astrophysics, the first in the world. Another person would be, I would like to mention, Vera Rubin. She experimentally verified the existence of what people call dark matter. 95% of our universe is made up of dark matter. Do we know what dark matter is? Nobody knows what dark matter is. What it is composed of, what its nature, nobody. The things we study in school, the periodic table, is just the 5% that we study. So Vera Rubin was one of those experimentalists who first discovered dark matter. Let me also, of course, mention, you probably heard Jane Goodall, who was a primatologist and anthropologist. Jane Goodall was accepted to the PhD program at the University of Cambridge, even without a college degree. Her work was so phenomenal and so groundbreaking that, well, she enrolled in the PhD program, got her PhD even without a college degree, and because of her groundbreaking work with wild chimpanzees. I may also mention Mariam Mirzakhani. She's an Iranian, but she was the first woman to win the highest prize in mathematics. There's no Nobel Prize in mathematics. There's the Fields Medal in mathematics. So Mariam was the first woman and the first Iranian to win this Nobel Prize, this Fields Medal in mathematics. So there are a lot of brilliant women. They could beat men anytime, right? And it would be a shame if we deny this opportunity to the other half of the world. It would be a shame to deny this right, and it would be unjust, and it would diminish the whole of humanity. So I just hope that the next Marie Curie will be a little Indian girl, which is a product of the Foundation for Educate the Girls globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for sharing about the scientists, the women scientists, for your wonderful insight. Now, I'll give the floor to Georgina Yang.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Georgina Hernandez Yang, also called by my friends Joanne. And good afternoon to Ma'am Susan, the trustees of Foundation, and of course our presenter for this afternoon, and Educate Girls, and Father Flavi, a dear friend of mine. And I think I come here representing Department of Education, but also on a personal level as a girls empowerment champion and advocate. And I think I want to start with kind of a bedtime story that I've always heard from my grandmother, even before I went to preschool, even before I went to elementary school. She would tell me about stories of girls, three girls having to sell dolls that they make themselves in order to be able to buy slippers so they can go to school. And the story of the three girls is actually the story of my grandmother and her two sisters. And I had no idea that those were the realities that she grew up in. And I always ask, why did your brothers never join you to sell dolls so that they could also have slippers? And they said they just gave the slippers to their brothers. But it was the girls who had to work in order for themselves and their brothers to be able to have slippers to go to school. And I think these are stories that numbers will not tell us. Actually, if you look at participation rate between girls and boys in the Philippines, the disparity is not high, at least in terms of what the numbers will tell us. But it's really the extra struggle, the double or triple or even quadruple burdens that women have to go through even as children. Even before they go to school, there are these struggles that exist. And though my grandmother's story is that of many years ago, she's now 83 years old, I think I still hear those stories when I go to communities of girls having to prepare meals for their brothers and other family members before they could go to school. And I think as we look at improving opportunities for girls, there's really this psyche that we need to be more aware of. And we're thankful for non-government organizations, initiatives like yours that really prioritize equity and inclusion, especially among girls, trying to change societal structures that create barriers to participation and also create barriers to breaking intergenerational cycle of poverty. I think as Dr. Bernida talks about the women leaders in the sciences, we also think of how women could contribute to societal improvement and economic gains. And that starts really on a very personal level with their own families, and then their villages, their communities, their barangays, and then they become the global idols and icons that we've heard of from Dr. Bernido. And so I think as we look at the numbers, even as a government public servant, when I look at the numbers, I ask myself, what does this say and what does this not say? What else do we need to know and understand about the statistics that we see in front of us? Because ultimately, it's really about changing people's lives, changing one person's life, and how that will have a multiplier effect. A popular number we have now, so while we have higher participation rate in the Philippines, is the quality of education in terms of functional literacy. So we can be happy and celebrate higher participation rate, almost equal participation rate between boys and girls. But what really is the quality of learning that we are able to provide to our learners? And that is really a challenge that not just the Department of Education, but the entire country is working together on in terms of improving quality of education, all leading towards having more access to job opportunities. So I think when we talk of education, we're really talking of providing a single person with the ability to choose the life that he or she wishes to have. And that begins with human capital development. That begins with providing them with quality education. And we really want to learn more from your challenges, your experiences. I think there are a lot of shared experiences that we can learn from each other. And we're thankful for this dialogue this afternoon.
Thank you, Georgina. Thank you very much for your insightful inputs. Let us now proceed with Dr. Seema's video. Seema Simar, are you able to see it? Maybe. Are you able to?
I was not able to join you
Yeah.
in person. It is a missed opportunity. I would like to begin by congratulating Educate Girls for receiving this prestigious award and welcoming them to the family of Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation. I am amazed with the work done by the Educate Girls in India. Thank you and your countless volunteers for their commitment and dedication to reach to the hard-to-reach areas and change the life of millions of young women and girls whom will be the future leaders and mothers. Facilitating access to education is not only the right things to do, but it is also the basic and fundamental human rights for everyone, regardless of their gender, color, geography, religion, economic and political situation, and etc. And more importantly, education is the strongest tool to achieve sustainable development and peace. The peace that everyone could live with human rights and dignity and free from fear and wants. In my personal view, the inequality, the discrimination and conflict start from home. When the female member of the family put in an inferior position and controlled fully by a male member of the family. That conflict reached to the street and to the society and the country as a whole. Access to education empower the girls and women to manage their family and also their reproductive rights and health in a proper way. A simple example, when a young woman sees amoeba under the microscope, she understands that this one cell make the family member sick and even kill. And she tried to not use the contaminated water and keep the family healthy. There is no doubt that educated women contribute to economy and reduction of poverty of the family. What is really important, listen to learn from the Educate Girls approach is the inclusive approach of them to the issue. When the people takes the ownership of the issue, then the success is guaranteed. The contribution of educated girls is not only empowering and giving voices to the voiceless girls and women, but the contribution to gender equality and reduction of domestic violence in society, not only in India, but in the region and beyond the region. It is a force for sustainable peace, security, and more importantly, for respect for human dignity. The empowerment of women and girls is not a threat to a male member of the family. That should be clear to the male member of the family. It is a positive contribution to the whole issues of family matters. I wish more success for the Educate Girls, and we all have to take this as a responsibility, not as a project. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Seema for sharing her expertise and thoughts. Now let us all proceed to the reaction video of Vicky Colbert.
First of all, hello from Colombia to everyone. Hello from Fundación Escuela Nueva. And congratulations to Safeena, to Educate Girls, and to the Magsaysay organization for promoting these important initiatives worldwide. I would like to highlight several points of the importance of working in girls' education and investing in girls' education. I'll just go very fast. So first of all, some of the key benefits are empowerment and economic growth, improved health and well-being, social progress and stability in society. It breaks the cycles of poverty, and it has some additional benefits like reducing child marriage and teen pregnancies, among others. And of course, sustainable practices, environmental issues, and increased participation in decision-making processes. So just investing in girls' education is one of the most important decisions worldwide. Now, in relation to educate girls, I would like to highlight that it's such a significant innovation because it addresses needs in India and poverty resource communities. And this can be tremendous potential for lessons learned all over the world. First of all, it's future-oriented, it's transformative, and it has sound, proven results. A significant number of girls are negatively affected by cultural, geographic, and economic factors all over the world. And just dealing with this is of great importance. The most important things that Safeena did, it was locally tested and adapted. This is the most important variable worldwide. The results are based on testing and sound evaluations, underlying a process of, second chance programs of learning, really, and the back to school and the second chance programs are so important for India's girls. Without doing it formally, Safeena followed a process of how to scale up. David Corton, in his theories of how to scale up, he talks about learning to be effective, learning to be efficient, and then you're ready to scale up. And without formally trying to do this, this is what Safeena did. She first tested it on the ground, it demonstrated effectiveness, then it demonstrated efficiency, and then it really scaled up. It combines the use of data management technology with on-the-ground humanistic approaches, which is a really rare combination worldwide. The rationale and justification for this innovation is well documented and explained in terms of the situation of girls and the cultural, geographic, and economic constraints. That transformative feature of Educate Girls resides in its integrated approach involving families, local authorities, local governments, and civil society, and it slowly, appropriately addresses cultural beliefs and practices and demonstrates that benefits for girls' education potentially has effects for everyone in a positive way. This eventually leads to a mindset change that can be reinforced through ownership by local communities and government authorities. This is really a very profound cultural change. So I just want to congratulate Educate Girls and Safeena, and it's already a movement, promoted and facilitated by Educate Girls staff, a corps of volunteers, and families and governments. So it's really promoting a profound cultural change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for your congratulations and for all your insights about the impact of empowering girls. Okay. I think we can now move to the question and answer from the floor as well as from those participating in this forum online. But before I do that, there are questions from Dr. Seema. Okay. First one is as of October 2025, how many active volunteers do you have for Team Balika and Pragati Prerak? And how do you sustain the project in terms of budget and resources?
Thank you for that question. So in terms of Team Balika volunteers, since inception, we have had 55,000 across all our villages. Currently, we have around 23 active volunteers in the villages that we're working. So some of them then get jobs and they move on, and which is great for us because we have our Team Balika volunteers, and after 2 or 3 years of working with us, they become government school teachers or they're getting into the police. And so you're seeing fierce champions of girls' education are actually getting into the system. So a lot of them move on, and we invest actively in their future opportunities and their jobs and their career growth. And so currently we're working with 23,000, and historically we have 55,000 who are part of our family. In terms of how we do our financial and resourcing, we actually do two things. One is the way the model is built is we are leveraging the government's current investment in education. So we're not building schools, we're not hiring teachers, we're actually leveraging all of that because the government's already spending that money. So there's a supply side that, schools are free for girls, and there's a primary school within 1 kilometer, there's a middle school within 3 kilometers. So there's this huge amount of current investment that we are leveraging on the supply side. In terms of our budget, therefore, we only have to spend money on the demand creation and on the mindset change and on the norm shift. So, and that is funded through philanthropic contributions. I have to say that we are very, very, very lucky. Our donor number 1 is still supporting us, and he's flying in tomorrow for the ceremony. Donor number 2 is also still continuing to fund us and is also flying in tomorrow for the ceremony. The reason I mention this is not project work. Dr. Seema also sort of mentioned, right? We are not doing 1 year, 2 year projects. We're actually staying in a village 6 to 8 years. Ours is a problem-solving approach. We are finding every single girl, and then we are waiting and working in that village till all of them are in school. And so therefore, the kind of philanthropy you need to support that work is very different kind of philanthropy. It isn't project-based money that is, do a project here and then you move on and you do something else. It is constant support, and which is what we have found, like-minded individuals and phenomenal individuals around the world who are actually supporting this mission in this wonderful, thoughtful, patient, flexible way. So that's how our resource mobilization works, and also working with the volunteers. And I have to mention, the working with the volunteers is absolutely key, because this is essentially just a mindset issue. So imagine if everybody in the world woke up tomorrow and magically, maybe there was some powder that Father Flavi sprinkles over the planet, but then we all wake up believing that men and women are equal, that sons and daughters are equal. We wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't need, Dr. Benito to describe about female scientists. It just wouldn't happen. It is all up here in our head. And so all of us actually have to make that effort to become aware of our own biases and to unlearn them and to relearn and role model equity in a way.
So thank you. These are the questions of Vicky Colbert. Educate Girls has a strong presence in rural and poverty areas in India. In your point of view, which of these would apply to other contexts, to other countries with similar challenges in rural poverty, isolation, and gender gaps? That's the first question.
Okay. So I think in terms of the way we work is that we are, first of all, our model works in rural, remote, and tribal areas. So it's built for that. We actually never work in any urban areas or even semi-urban areas because we think access is actually not an issue there, right? And things are very different. So one is very, very, very remote, rural, tribal. That's where the model has the highest stickiness, one. And where there is the highest need. So even in India, we're working only in those villages that our AI is throwing up as where there are the highest number of out-of-school girls, right? So similarly, wherever there might be, so I know that there are hotspots regarding out-of-school girls in South Asia, in Sub-Saharan Africa, in other countries, etc. We've also been approached with, let's say, something like a country like Peru, which is very mountainous, and therefore the communities tend to be very remote, where the needs for alternative learning may be very high. So all of those places, we think our model could be very useful. I think also some of the tools, even if it's not the entire thing, but the algorithm that we've built could again be very useful. For example, recently somebody approached us saying, I want to work for child brides. And actually, out-of-school girls is a proxy indicator for child brides, right? If you're out of school, you're most likely. So there are so many uses for the data, the tech tools, etc., where this work would be relevant and where it can be expanded and scaled to.
Thanks. Next question is, in Colombia, many innovative educational projects face challenges once they become national policy. I guess, based on your experience, Safeena, what institutional conditions or partnerships are needed to scale an innovation like Educate Girls without losing its community-driven essence? And how do you combine public policy and community-driven essence?
Yeah. Again, I think for all of these pieces, they have to be fit for purpose, right? So for us, we're not actually building policy in our program because the supply side, the policy is already there. So we're building our model to sit on top of the government policy because it's a demand generation, it's a mindset change, and therefore the model is community driven, right? It doesn't need to be done everywhere. It only needs to be done in those hotspot areas, in those red patches areas. So one is that piece where we do work on policy components with the government. Again, like I said, fit for purpose. So for example, we work with the government intensively to make the second chance programs free. Now that's something that we need. So, in Rajasthan, for example, they have made second chance programs free for all girls. And you won't believe it, while nationally, we have huge gender gap. We have maybe 70% are boys and 30% are girls, even in our remote and our open schooling programs. In Rajasthan, we're actually seeing far more girls enrolling than boys. And there, that policy intervention is just so needed and so required. And so if you make it free, that also has the stickiness. So nationally, we are hoping that all states can make second chance programs and open schooling free for girls. So these are the kind of policies that we really want to do. While others, the community ownership work is only in those areas where there's a demand-driven problem.
Thank you very much. I guess we can now open the floor to questions from the floor, as well as questions from our participants online.
Thank you so much to our panelists. That will be the one moderating the questions from our online viewers and also from the people that are here today. So I'll start with a question for Educate Girls. So there's actually two questions that are quite similar. What advice would you give to young people who would want to create or spearhead community-based programs like Educate Girls, but don't know how or where to start or may have limited resources?
So maybe I can just speak from my experience. When I started this work, I actually hadn't worked in education before. And I started this work because there was an interruption in my own education. There was a gap. I was out of school myself. And I had somebody help me, my aunt, and therefore I ended up going to university and getting forward in life. So it really is like, I hope whatever you're starting, your purpose is really close to you and you're really committed to that purpose. That's one thing. And secondly, the way I started was I actually asked for a lot of help. I went to other NGOs and I said, listen, I really want to do this, but how did you do community mobilization? How do you do learning? I mean, yesterday we had this lovely conversation with Dr. Pranita and I was like, oh my God, I have to come to your school and I have to learn how you're doing things. So I think just going out there and finding, and people are so willing to teach and people are so willing to share. So that's where we kind of started. And also meeting with the governments, at least in our case, it was really important. And the government actually gave us the list of critical gender gap districts in education and said, hey, focus here or do this or whatever. So that's what I would say is take baby steps, ask for a lot of help, make sure that your mission is really close to your heart. And then finally, I think we design at ground zero. So nothing is designed theoretically or anything. When you're designing, you have to sit on the ground, you have to be in the village. Even our door-to-door survey, I personally, have done it. All of our team members have done it. Unless you test and do things yourself at ground zero, you're not going to have the insights to build something for scale. And if you do want to design for scale, then design for scale from day one. So even for us, we started our pilot at 50 villages because at 50 villages, you can't be present in 50 schools. So you automatically start to design all your components, your processes, etc., to actually enable you to scale later.
Lovely. Kat, I think Gayatri Lobo can also share her thoughts later if she wants to. So yeah, she's also from it. Now, if you feel free to just come in and discuss whatever you want to discuss in relation to Safeena's comments.
Thank you, Safeena. I think you also mentioned the use of AI, which is also wonderful also for those that have limited resources as well. Now, this question is to Dr. Cynthia Bautista and to ASEC Yang, and can also be answered by Dr. Bernardino. According to a November 2025 article in GMA 7, the Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM2, reported the number of functionally illiterate students has increased in the last 3 decades. The number is now 24.8 million as of 2024. Please explain to us the reason for the increased number of functionally illiterate students in the country. What could the government, NGOs, do to address the problem?
So I'll start, and maybe Georgina can give us a more official answer. I guess our education deteriorated without our knowing. In a sense, functional literacy, we used to think, or at least my generation used to think, that we were so literate. Our literacy rates were always very high. But that was before they put in comprehension. And very recently, our statistical agency maybe changed the way the questions are phrased and included comprehension, and discovered significant number of illiterate, a significant proportion of functionally illiterate population across age gaps, age groups. It's not just among the very young. So then functional literacy becomes a real challenge for us now, all the way from elementary school, all the way even to college. There is also a significant proportion of college students who cannot comprehend what they read. I mean, and this is something that we may have missed, or we may have been thinking of our laurels because of the status of Philippine education for a long time, when it used to be one of the hubs in Asia. And we used to have graduate students coming from our ASEAN neighbors doing their graduate work with us. So that might have contributed to the problem. And I guess I'll pass it on to Georgina for the more official answer.
And I hope to be able to answer this in 2 parts. First is the official answer. We actually came out with a press release today. DepEd calls for full funding of education mandates to address functional literacy. So first of all, I think starting a sustainable and effective solution begins with an acknowledgement of the problem, and really this administration understands and accepts the realities. No, there's no denying about these challenges. I think the perennial underfunding in the education sector is something that we are working towards addressing. Secretary Sonny said that while responsibilities grew, resources did not always follow. We have been spread too thinly, and we must reclaim our focus on foundational learning, so kinder to 3rd grade, consistent with the intentions of first EDCOM in the 1990s. So I think these challenges that we are seeing right now really needs a kind of a whole of society approach. So it will be too simplistic to say that we need to fund education. And so the second part of my answer would be that I think the social determinants of education is something that needs to be talked about. We have children or learners who go to school who may be traumatized from bullying, who may be suffering mental health challenges, maybe even in their homes are experiencing challenges. And when they go to school, these are in their minds. So imagine going to school and having all of these concerns that you are carrying. So I think the role of parents, the role of communities, the role of local governments would be very important in addressing functional literacy, while on the larger scale, the central government, the Department of Education will continue to work on policies and programming and budgeting. I think at the community level, we need more coordination and collaboration across non-government organizations similar to Educate Girls. Father Flavi is also doing a lot of work with alternative learning systems in the Philippines, really catching out those who are not able to enter into the traditional schooling system. If we're able to meet people where they are, if they are struggling with mental health, if they are being bullied, if there are challenges on sexual or physical abuse, I think we need to be able to address that as well if we want to address in a holistic manner our challenges in education. In fact, even reproductive health, absenteeism, we take sanitary napkins for granted. But in rural areas, during their period, they're absent because they don't have napkins. So they stay home. The girls, the adolescent girls stay home because they don't have sanitary napkins. Or they go to school and they risk being bullied because of not being able to wear sanitary pads. These are things that maybe in urban areas we take for granted, but these are realities in rural communities that I think need to be talked about so that we can address the challenges in education in a more holistic manner.
Beyond budget, actually, one of the findings of EDCOM 2 was that 64% of the high school teachers did not major in the subject that they are teaching. That's 64%. And one of the problems is teacher migration. A lot of the Filipino teachers migrate because, of course, we cannot compete with the salaries abroad, right? So that's one. US lacks qualified teachers, Germany lacks qualified teachers, Australia lacks qualified teachers, Canada lacks qualified teachers. Where are they getting the teachers? They get it from the Philippines. The Philippine government pours in a lot of money for teacher training, right? And once the teachers get the certificate, they go abroad. So we are actually funding the problem or solving the problem of other countries, but we are spending. So that's crucial, the lack of qualified, competent teachers. That's number one. Number two is the suspension of classes. One of the findings of EDCOM 2 was that for last year, about 56 days, there was class suspension because of earthquakes, floods, typhoons. You cannot postpone typhoons. You cannot cancel earthquakes. You cannot cancel floods. It will happen year after year after year. And the total number of classes lost would be almost like 3 months. So that's learning loss. Okay? And one of the findings of EDCOM 2 was that only grades 5 and 6 had complete textbooks. So earthquakes have been going on for decades. Teacher migration has been going on for decades, and so that's why we're slowly deteriorating. And hopefully, I hope to believe that these problems about lack of qualified teachers, lack of textbooks, and class suspensions might be solved by the dynamic learning program, hopefully.
Speaking of which, Dr. Bernino, we actually have a few questions on that. Tell us about your work in Central Visayan Institute Foundation School. What were the challenges you encountered when you and your wife took over that school? And how did you improve the quality of education in school while at the same time keeping tuition fee affordable?
Well, the characteristic of the dynamic learning program that we have is that 80% of the period, the students are learning independently. That's why it's robust against teacher migration. My wife used to say, what if all the physics teachers would migrate to the US? Can high school students still learn enough physics to do well in college? Our answer is yes. Because of the program that we have, because the students are learning from this, what we call the learning activity sheets. It's one page, one concept. And it's bite-sized because these LAS or learning activity sheets are accomplished from the challenged learners all the way to the bright ones. So it's essentially that. I could give a 10-hour lecture, right? But
They actually have a follow-up question. What do you believe are the most critical policy barriers preventing such models from being scaled across public schools in the Philippines?
the program from being scaled, I think that's being solved by DepEd now because fortunately, the Department of Education is piloting the dynamic learning program this school year. And I think DepEd panicked when there were a lot of class suspensions. And they really know deep in their heart that the children are not learning when there are class suspensions. And the only way, one of the ways to solve that is through these learning activity sheets, which could be accomplished by students at home, so that learning continues. Because that's also what happened during the pandemic. There was no learning loss for 2 years in our school during the pandemic because of our system.
This question,
If I may
yes, go ahead.
add, so on the dynamic learning system, it's really a priority of the Department of Education. That's why we're working closely with Dr. Bernido to scale the pilot and ensure our resilience amidst 50-day average class suspensions. We're also looking at different modalities. So one is the DLP or the Dynamic Learning Program. We're also looking into different EdTech platforms in areas where it's possible. We know that not all areas would have good access to internet, but where it is, that is something we are also looking at. So flexible learning options. And we're also seeing this even among our learners who are pregnant. They actually do not drop out from school. We offer the alternative delivery modes or ADMs where they answer modules. It's being sent to their homes by their teachers or even by community members. Only very few go to ALS or alternative learning system. Actually, majority of the monitored pregnant learners are in the traditional schooling system, availing of the flexible learning options and alternative delivery modes.
Wonderful. Speaking of partnerships with the government, this question is for Safeena and again, Dr. Bernido. Beyond statistics, what do you think you did right in your approach to government as your partner that reframed the mindset and now has adapted your solutions? Is there any innovative approach or is it just pure patience and determination?
I have to say, as Educate Girls, we don't control anything, right? You don't control families and parents. You don't control schools you work in. You don't control, anything, really. And so at the heart, we are mobilizers. We're community mobilizers. We're mobilizing everybody, all of our stakeholders. And I think that's the approach, the partnership approach, the influencing, the mobilization approach that you have to take to all across. And I think the how do you influence, how do you mobilize people, right? Is you build alignment, so it's the same that goes with the government, is I think our goals and our destination point is aligned. Even they want to see all the kids in school, so our goals are aligned and therefore it is easier to partner. And I think to approach it with the true spirit of partnership. Sometimes I think we see them as the other, but they're also looking at like achieving the same goals. So our success is their success in a way. So I think approaching it with a true sense of partnership and through influence and really creating evidence. You don't convince somebody without evidence, without data, without actually showing it at scale. I can't do it in 2 villages and be like, hey, why don't you adopt it in an entire state? So governments are also looking for evidence-based models. They're looking at large scale on the ground so that they can say, okay, fine, they know what they're talking about. But really, and I think for everything, it's always purpose first. So if you keep the girl child in the center, then you can actually, all of our stakeholders come together and partner, and it makes it much easier.
Thank you, Safeena.
Safeena has answered it essentially. But
Perfect.
Yeah, performance indicators, that's the number one.
Wonderful. And for Safeena as well, what internal capacities did Educate Girls need to build before launching DIB? Launching DIB. DID.
Oh, what do we need to do internally for launching the world's first development impact bond in education? I think one of the things was that we actually needed to know that our model works. We weren't at an R&D stage, so I wouldn't recommend it for people who are just starting out. If you're just a startup and things, and because you're still figuring out your hypothesis, you're still figuring out your model. So don't do it at that point. We needed to be. We were, I think, almost at 6,000 to 8,000 villages we were operating in, and that's the time that we actually stepped forward to pilot the bond. So one is that we had that, and I think the second is that know that it's when you go down that kind of a pathway, you should have the internal capacity to be able to absorb failure. And to be able to sort of course correct from that. So the first year, the bond yielded no results. The second year, it yielded no results, right? But we knew also that education is a multi-year piece, right? We needed everybody, our donors, everybody to hold their nerve, because we know that a child, when they're coming into the school for the first time, they're not going to learn immediately. And that, it will take some time for them to get to the basics. And then by the third year, we had actually achieved 160% of our goals. So just make sure that when you're doing it for the right reasons, and you have the patience and you have the ability to hold your nerve and be able to then learn and course correct as need be. But again, do not do it if you don't already have a working model.
Thank you. And now, this last question is for all our panelists, including you, Doc Cynthia. As young leaders, how can we stay motivated when advocating for change seems slow and difficult? We can start with...
Start with the youngest, because the young leaders. Georgina.
I think I'm the youngest, so I may have no right to feel hopeless right now. No, but I think it's a daily commitment to be able to see the possible amidst all the impossible things that are happening. And it's easy to lose hope, but I know in my heart that if I lose hope, then there will be lesser people who will be fighting for girls' rights and for better opportunities for everyone, for social equality. I think I just anchor myself on my values, my principles, what are important to me, and I focus on that. And I see the challenges as part of the givens. Like, I don't like math. I am sorry, Dr. Bernido. I don't like math, but I put that already into the equation so that I am not shocked, I am not frustrated, I do not feel like I want to give up when I see challenges around me, because I have already factored it into the equation. And that I know that we continue to build coalitions and collaborate with people. In the end, I look within, but I also look around, and that I am not doing this mission by myself, and that the more of us joining this mission, not just in the Philippines, but even globally. Thank you to Ma'am Susan, because now she has connected me with Educate Girls, and we have allies already, not just here, but in other parts of the world. I think these things keep us going, and it's a lifelong mission that never ends.
You just have to dream big. Just have a dream, right? So you have this dream, and as you look at yourself and try to ask the question, how do I reach that dream? What are the gaps? Identify the gaps. And the next question after identification is, how will I solve the gaps? And then keep yourself busy. Keep the dream alive, right? And just work for it. If you need help, ask for help. If you need to train yourself or acquire some skill, just do it. Just dream big and identify the gaps and do a lot of problem solving along the way.
Definitely, I think having a goal, if you're a young leader, then your goal should be really crystal clear to you and the pathway on how you want to get to it. And again, it's a lonely journey, so make sure you have a network, you have other young people that you can plug into, especially if you're feeling demotivated or you're feeling alone. The third, I would say, is that social change or any kind of change takes time. So you have to be patient, but that patience can sometimes run low when you're young, right? You don't have patience. So one thing that we always think about is like celebrate every little tiny win. And if you keep celebrating, that keeps you motivated and you know that you're actually on your path towards your destination. So I know we all in our rush to get to the end goal, sometimes you can't be in a rush, but celebrate every little piece of progress that you make along the way. And that's really sort of important to do.
So in 2008, we actually had a centennial lecture in our university. And the title of our lecture was When Reforms Don't Transform. After seeing different kinds of projects and programs that actually work only while the projects are on, and then looking at all these problems of institutional continuity, which may be global, depends on the administration and things change. And so in moments like that, you might feel, oh no, it don't work. It may not actually transform. Whatever we're doing right now may not actually transform. And then 2 years ago, we were asked, there were 3 of us in this forum, we were asked to do something like a keynote plenary, because we're all 3 of us, to talk about reforms that have transformed, or at least since the time we delivered in 2008. And not too many of the reforms actually transform. I mean, maybe they transform in little ways. But then we have to constitute ourselves as having hope. Because otherwise, nothing happens. And maybe for young leaders, sometimes when the macro seems almost hopeless, even if it's not, I mean, it might seem hopeless, working in our little gardens and trying to make a difference and celebrating small wins actually helps revive whatever spirit that needs revival. But I guess I go back to what Safeena was saying. It's a lonely thing. It's a lonely job, especially when you're on the ground. And this is where spirituality becomes important. Not religion, but spirituality. Because one of the things that is actually bringing people down is cynicism. I mean, you can't be cynical because everything is not going well. And cynicism does not help any. So the way to get out of cynicism is to actually engage yourself in what you are doing, immerse yourself in it as though you will make a difference. Dream big and you will make that difference. But spiritually, do not attach to the outcomes, because the outcomes might be negative, so that you're also do not become hopeless. So I guess it's spirituality and celebrating little wins, but it's also a long and tedious struggle. I mean, I guess we have to be patient, but patience is not easy to come with, especially when things are not working so well.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Now, in our mission to not only educate girls, but in parallel strive for true systemic and sustainable change, we have to never forget, remember, to dream big, to connect, to be patient, connect with others, celebrate your small wins, and more importantly, never lose hope. Thank you, everyone, for asking your questions as well and for engaging with our panelists. We will now go back to Dr. Cynthia for her synthesis.
So this is not easy, okay. Today's lecture actually traced a community-first, ground zero designed intervention, outcomes-anchored pathway to girls' education at scale. I think what is remarkable is the scale. Safeena Husain's Educate Girls began by organizing local volunteers to find every girl, persuade every family, and work with public school, with the schools, work on their education rather than around them. I think it's also remarkable working within a system that doesn't work and making a difference in that system. Over time, the organization coupled people power with data discipline, testing, iterating, and proving what works through the development impact band in education, which exceeded both learning and enrollment targets. This union of social mobilization and measurable outcomes demonstrates how a grassroots movement becomes a system capability. As Seema Sinha mentioned actually earlier, the union addresses sustainable development goals. And Safeena mentioned it's 9 out of 17 sustainable development goals. And then from access, within a lifelong learning framework, Pragati expands the frame from enrollment to credentialing for young women, 15 to 29 years of age, and remarkably 31,500 girls from 500. From 300, it's even worse, converting second chances into recognized qualifications through village-based learning camps and open schooling. So their logic is really elegant. Meet learners where they are. Actually, is really a point that we have to learn. Lower the friction of re-entry and credential learning so it travels into the higher levels of education. While the Educate Girls approach rhymes with Vicky Colbert's Fundación Educación Nueva's community-anchored pedagogy, I think Vicky actually highlighted that it's a very good example of theories of change and effectiveness of scale. It's a case. If this were a class, it would be a case for that. A case for how you effect a profound cultural change. While Chris actually did not mention about his program until the question and answer, but he actually discussed the remarkable contributions of women to science, and his hope that the next Madame Curie would be an Indian girl coming from Rajasthan or from one of the poorest areas. But he also, actually, his model of the learning activity sheet, the model that works very well, 70 to 80% in his model are learning activities, and only 20 to 30% is teacher talk. So it works very well where you have teacher scarcity. Remote areas would definitely have teacher scarcity or limited connectivity. While Educate Girls remains an NGO, its processes and data systems have been embedded in multiple state operations without making policy influence per se as a goal. I think Safeena was saying earlier that it pushes policies that they need to fulfill their mission. So they're still essentially the question earlier about how do you manage a community-based thing and government. They're not into government. They're into government. They partner with government because they need the policies and they need people to change their mindsets. But that's that. So the composite message across the panel is that design must honor context, must develop interventions that are grounded. So I love your ground zero, Safeena. So what travels across contexts are 3 patterns: community legitimacy, door-to-door mobilization, peer learning, create consent for change, instructional routines, guided independent work, for instance, Pragati's lower cost of raise participation, stewardship, of course, outcomes, stewardship, partnership, not for just a project, okay, for 8 years in a particular area, and the fact that your funders are coming tomorrow on Friday is proof that you will have continued support. And then, of course, attention to learners. So for stakeholders considering adaptation, it's really community volunteers, a teacher as facilitator pedagogy, community-based structured learning materials, attention to students. I think you're saying, Safeena was saying earlier, the learner is the center. Simple, transparent metrics that help sustain resources because you have to prove that you're actually working. I guess earlier, Vicky also mentioned it, educating part of 133 million girls out of school will impact across health, reproductive health, women's reproductive health, nutrition, employment, family management, reduce even disaster-related deaths of women who are more adversely affected than men. In effect, it is actually bending the arc of development, one girl at a time. And I guess we will have to support and pray, Father Flavi, that the 10 by 10 is actually achieved, 10 million girls in 10 years for educate girls. So thank you very much. Guess.
Thank you, Dr. Cynthia Rose Bautista, for your synthesis. At this juncture, we would like to request for a photo opportunity. Joining us in the photo opportunity are Educate Girls representatives Safeena, Husain, Gayatri Lobo, and our panelists, Dr. Cynthia Rose Bautista, Christopher Bernido, Ms. Georgina Yang, and Ramon Magsaysay, TLI Director Joy Adampay, and Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation President Susan Afan.
May we ask the audience to come near, so we'll have a group selfie. So, are you good with that? Kayo na lang daw po ang pupunta doon. Kat will have you all in front here and for a selfie, then I'll turn it over again to you. Can we ask the audience to please stand up and wave and please go nearer our guests and speakers. Okay, everyone's ready. Can you wave and say Magsaysay? Can we ask those on the right side to move? Sorry.
Please move a bit more to the center. Thank you. Yes. Keep going. Okay.
Thank you. It's quite heavy on the other side. Okay, let's wave again and say Magsaysay. 1, 2, 3. We ask you to Please take your seats again for our closing. Thank you po, sir.
For Safeena.
Now, before we close today's program, we'd like to share what the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation has in store for its 67th awards. We invite everyone to visit the book fair and the food booths at the Ramon Magsaysay Plaza, and don't miss the chance to join our vision board activity just outside the hall. Share your thoughts, your dreams, and inspirations with us. Now, on November 5, at 1:00 p.m. Manila time, we have the lecture by Ms. Safeena Ali of Maldives, Protecting Paradise. Maldives on the front line of the global plastic crisis, climate change, and ocean degeneration. Also on November 5 at 9 to 11:30 a.m., there's an Alon film screening and youth forum on environmental awareness and collective action. The Alon exhibit, in partnership with the De La Salle College of St. Benilde, highlights the resilience and collective action, and it will remain open beyond Festival Week. On November 6th, in the Philippines, we also have our lecture on radical compassion, restoring dignity through second chances. On November 6 at 1 p.m., we have a special performance by Teatro ng Kalinga at Paghilom, exploring social justice and healing through theater. We also invite everyone to watch the 67th Ramon Magsaysay Awards presentation ceremonies live on Facebook and Instagram to honor this year's extraordinary awardees. The 67th Ramon Magsaysay Award presentation ceremonies will be streamed live on November 7 at 4:30 p.m. Philippine time via Facebook and YouTube. We extend our thanks again to our official media partners, the Associated Press, Tatler, and Puma Podcast. And again, our thanks to partners who made this event possible. Philippine Airlines, the official airline partner of the 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Awards Lecture Series. SGV & Co., major sponsor of the 2025 Ramon Magsaysay Awards Lecture Series and thematic events. And also supported by Pioneer and the Peace and Equity Foundation. We'd like to acknowledge our co-conveners, 2030 Youth Force, ASEAN Youth Organization, Good Gov PH, Philippine Young Water Professionals, Better with Water Philippines, and Far Eastern University Nicanor Reyes Memorial Foundation. We would love to see you share your time with us here today during the lecture. So please tag Ramon Magsaysay on social media at Magsaysay Awards. Stay updated on all activities and follow the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And finally, please evaluate today's program by scanning the QR code on the screen or using the link posted in the comments on Facebook and YouTube. For the participants of the Youth Forum with Educate Girls representatives happening this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 at the Perez Room, you may please proceed to the back door of the hall after taking your afternoon snacks. You will be fetched by Ms. Marie Perez and the RMAF ushering team and then taken to the venue. Now, to formally close the first lecture of the year, did you all have fun? Were you inspired? Wonderful. I am returning now the microphone to Dr. Cynthia Bautista for her closing remarks.
We are formally closing informally. So we're very grateful, of course, to our awardee, Safeena and Gayatri, Educate Girls. We're also very grateful to our other awardees who are here with us. And you will be listening to their lectures tomorrow and on Thursday. And of course, we're very grateful to the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, to Susan, to the board members
for actually organizing the yearly Ramon Magsaysay Awards and the yearly Ramon Magsaysay Lectures. And having been here long ago, and having been in this room where the lectures were delivered, I guess this is a more professional looking room now, and a more professional lecture with a more professional skit that all of us had to follow. But thank you very much, everyone, and we hope you enjoyed the afternoon. And please share the snacks that you will be guided to the snacks. Thank you.
Congratulations to the India team, Marie, Poch, and Lance for this lecture, and the RMTLI team and the coordinators. Yay! On to tomorrow, Team Maldives.